Hey everybody! It is Thursday, and so you know what time that means it is. It is Shaper Sessions. I'm Russ, and this is...
I'm Jake Stillwell, application specialist. That's one. I'm Noah. It's been a while. It's really good to be back, and we're really happy to join you here on Thursday from Shaper HQ. And today, what are we talking about, Russ?
We're talking about fixturing and the Shaper Workstation. This bad boy over here. And I mean, look at this plethora of goodies we have here. This is a veritable cornucopia of fixturing.
Wow.
Yes, it's a cornucopia of fixturing over here.
It's not Thanksgiving yet. We got to do Halloween first.
Halloween first. We'll get to Halloween a little bit later. First, just one small housekeeping thing. Based on some feedback last week on the giveaway wheel, we're mixing it up a little bit. There's going to be a link to a poll that's going to pop up at the bottom of your screen. It's there now. I'm getting in my ear from Goose, who's up at our switchboard. The link is there now. So please add your first and last name to the poll. I think there's a cool question there, like,
and your favorite
what
Goose
is
fun fact?
your favorite Goose fun fact? Give us a good Goose origin story. Nobody knows actually why Goose is called Goose.
Yeah.
So give us a good Goose origin story, or tell us what your favorite origin operation is. I think that's the official question.
Your favorite origin story.
Oh, there you go. And Ted, Shaper Support, who's also in the chat today, is going to take those responses and put them into a legit wheel that's got everybody this time. If you are joining us live, thank you. Hang on for the Q&A at the end of the show. We always do a giveaway. I think we got a swag pack today, a shirt. And what's the third thing, Noah?
Call it.
A collet. We got a swag pack, a shirt, and a collet. And if you're joining us on demand on YouTube after the fact,
Why weren't you here?
please join us live next time, because we do Q&A after the show, and we do a giveaway every time. And it's awesome. A little more casual back and forth. We answer all the questions that you post in the comments of this show live. We'll answer them after. So get those questions in, and we'll check in a couple times during the show about that as well. But back to what we're here for, fixturing. So, I mean, before we even explain any of this stuff, let's just look at how cool some of these things are. This thing's got 90 degrees in it. This has got a bunch of Delrin dowel pins in it, and this cool cam clamp here from Veritas. That's like cast iron. This is some weird plywood thing that for some reason matches the profile of this chair leg. What's up with all of that?
Yeah, well, so we're really here to talk about Workstation. And Workstation is Origin's companion, really. And they really can't go one without the other, right? It's like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
I've heard.
Like Russ and Noah.
Like Russ and Noah. Yeah, you know. And Origin Workstation kind of combined to make this super powerful, complete system for joinery and working on small parts that are difficult to hold on to, and really kind of anything in between. If you can dream it, you can set it up on Workstation and cut it.
Yeah. We like to say there's two halves to the equation here. One half is cutting the thing, but the other half of that equation is holding the thing.
True. And the other half is design. We planned that earlier. It didn't really go well. It was funnier before, we promise. So first, I think we should maybe walk through kind of the parts and pieces of Workstation before we kind of get lost in the weeds of all the extra bits that you can make for your various projects as you're kind of getting into it and figuring out how to use Workstation. But you got to start with the basics first. So should I take it away?
Take it away.
Right, cool.
Yeah, let's show some stuff.
Yeah.
The basics of it is Workstation is a modular fixturing setup so that you can hold anything that you want to work on it.
Yep.
And it's got all kinds of features that help us do that.
We're going to go through all of those features, or at least most of those features today. And if we miss anything, be sure to hold us accountable in the comments. Get your questions in. Remember, Q&A at the end. We're going to answer all those questions. Well, let's get rolling. Goose, can we get that tight end shot on this guy? Awesome. So I'm just going to start by kind of showing the two most important parts of Workstation here. And that is what we call the body and the clamping face. And those make up the kind of platform that Workstation kind of starts with. So the body is what's on top here, and the most important bit of that is, as you can see, there's actually shaper tape pre-applied to the top of that guy. So you don't have to worry about getting the rolls of shaper tape out and applying it to your fixtures anymore. If you got Workstation, it's always there. It's always ready to go. It's very durable, and you just don't need to worry about it. It's on there. So the next bit of it is this piece. We call this the clamping face. And so this has got some T-track in it. Oh, we can maybe get up close here. This has got some T-track in it that you can use to get clamps pretty much anywhere you want to clamp a workpiece. So it's really, really nice to have a lot of versatility in your clamping surfaces, a lot of different ways and different angles that you can use to hit what you need to hit. Other part of this that's interesting, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but if you get us back on the front here, you can see there's actually quite a few sets of holes on the body where the clamping face attaches. And that's because you can put the clamping face onto the body at different heights. And we'll talk a little bit later about why that's important, but keep that in mind that you can actually set the clamping face up at variable heights to the top surface of the body. So a couple of screws here. You don't need to go crazy on these guys, just snug them up a little bit. They may not, this is a pro tip, they may not actually go all the way to their end stop. Do not try and over tighten these screws, just get them snug, okay? And it'll hold on there really, really well. We got a few other pieces here that are really important. We're going to start with these support arms. So these guys snug in on either side, doing this blind. Oh, there we go. And those guys slot in, and again, tighten up these screws, snug, don't over tighten. It's going to be a theme here. You don't need to go crazy on this stuff. It will hold with just a little bit of tension. So these arms are in tandem with the support bar. So the support arms and the support bar create a surface for Origin to rest on as you're working out over, air, right? So sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it isn't, and it's very adjustable. You can pop these up, you can get it in close, you can get it out far away. It's really, really built to adapt to any project that you might bring to bear on Workstation. So this is really important for holding on to, or rather supporting Origin while you're working. And the other part of that that's really critical is if you maybe cut over to the Workstation cam here. I don't know if you can see this, but on the front edge of your Origin, right here, you'll feel a little bump. And that bump is really critical for Z-Touch. And Z-Touch helps identify where the tip of the bit is. And if that little bar isn't actually on a surface while you're doing a Z-Touch, the Z-Touch isn't going to work. So that's the other really important bit of having the support bar on, is for getting your Z-Touch complete. So last couple little pieces here while we get through the anatomy, and then I promise I'll shut up and we'll get back to Russ for the fun stuff. Next in line is the shelf. I'm going to get this support bar out of the way. And actually, one thing I'm demonstrating quite well here that we make a reasonably big deal about in the manual is that Workstation actually, once you start putting some of the accessories on, or especially if your project is heavy and cantilevered out over the front of your bench, Workstation actually can get unstable and start to tip and might even fall off your bench, okay? And we've got a few options to stop that, so it's really important that you pick one of these options. We gave you many, but you got to pick one so that it doesn't fall off your bench, because we don't want your Workstation to get banged up. We don't want your Origin to land on the ground, your project. All of those are bad things. So there's quite a few holes in here. These outer two are meant for screwing into an MFT hole pattern, so the MFT3 Festool table. So the hole pattern that's in the MFT tables, the spacing matches the spacing on these outer holes. These inner two guys are built for the mobile workstation, the Festool MWT1000. I'm going to get that wrong.
That's a great question. Goose, if you can look that one up and shout it in our ears, maybe we can get that out.
So those inner holes are meant for clamping on that mobile workstation. And sort of anything in between. I believe that those are threaded M6, I believe. We'll have to look that up in the manual, which we'll talk about in a little bit, because it's a nice manual that nice people here at Shaper wrote. Don't know who those people are. MW1000. I was close. The T was wrong. And then the other mounting options, you can see there's these wings on the outside, and there's 2 holes in either wing. You can just run a screw into your bench, or something that I like to do is actually mark those holes out and put a threaded insert or a set of threaded inserts in my bench so that it's really easy to take those on and off. And you're not just driving wood screws into your bench and kind of eating it up where you like to put your workstation. So that is all of the screw down options. Other options, we've got still this wing, and there's actually a notch cut out of the wing, if you guys can see that. All right. Who put all this stuff here? So this notch cutout is actually built for a clamp to stick up through. So if you've got, again, an MFT table or a table with a hole pattern cut in it, you should be able to slip a clamp up through the hole, and that's what this little notch is in there for, right? Okay. So make sure you hold workstation down, because otherwise it could end very poorly. And you heard it here first. Stick it to the table. Don't let me catch you not screwing your workstation down.
Or what?
So the shelf, I interrupted myself here. So back to the shelf. So the shelf is where the rubber meets the road for small projects. So this guy aligns theoretically. This one's a little sticky. It's a topic for later. So lines up with the outermost vertical tracks on the clamping face. And this is a height adjustable work surface. So this MDF top is a spoil board. You can use double-sided tape, which we sell in our store. This stuff's great. You can use double-sided tape to stick your projects down to that shelf surface. And once you are happy with where the shelf is, and that's usually with your project lined up with this top surface, you can just pull this clamping lever forward, and that will actually lock the shelf in place. And fun fact, there's actually 2 settings on the shelf locking lever. One of them is actually just a little more tension, and that's to help you get things placed. So all the way down is fully unlocked, and then there's this middle setting, which is just kind of snug so that you can still move it around, but it's a little easier to do fine adjustments on the shelf. And then when you're really happy with it, all the way up, and that's going to lock it.
That's a nice little design detail there.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. So last couple pieces, and then we will move on from the Anatomy 101 workstation. The last setup feature here is what we call the angle fence. Maybe we can get a little tight in on this guy. So this is the angle fence, and this is used to set an angle for your workpiece, and set a good repeatable angle. And one thing that we have to do to get that angle set up, and this is a part of the clamping face anatomy, is deploy the vertical alignment pins. So there are a set of these on both the left and the right hand side of workstation. And when you unscrew those, again, don't tighten them like crazy, just snug. Those provide a vertical alignment registration for anything that you're clamping up in your workstation. So that's really important. Just for getting things vertical, you don't need this angle fence. You can just align with the pins. But if you want to set something at an angle, or actually if you're trying to do something that only hits one of those vertical alignment pins, and maybe a short piece, you can stick the angle fence on and actually just leave it at 90 degrees. So this thumb screw comes with it, and you can hear, hopefully, when the bottom of the angle fence taps into that vertical alignment pin, it's at 90 degrees. But you can adjust the angle fence all the way to 45. And this works on either side. You can flip it around and use it on either side of Workstation. My recommendation is that if you're looking for a very precise angle, that the setup with the angle fence isn't really going to do the trick. But if you're just looking to get a repeatable angle, meaning that it's okay if it's not, exactly 15 degrees, it's okay if it's 14 and a half, but you want it to be 14 and a half every single time you make a cut, it's okay to rely on this angle. But if you're going to need a very precise angle, we'll talk about how to get that a little later on.
And one more thing. The clamps come with it.
Clamps. So two of these toggle clamps come with Workstation. And these have got, if you get onto the bench cam again, these have got T-track bolts that slip right into the T-track slots on Workstation. So you can stick anything that you're fixturing in there and get a really, really good firm clamping purchase on it. Also, what's kind of fun is that we designed these T-slots not only to work with the clamps that come with Workstation, but also with these F-style clamps, these Festool ones. But these have become ubiquitous with these dog hole tables, so lots of brands make them, and I believe most of them do fit. Definitely the Festool ones fit. And the fun little detail here actually is if you've got these clamping arms on, and you'd think, oh well, there's no way I can get the clamps on the top two rails. Well, we actually left the sides cut so that you could do that. Other fun thing too is that these clamps are actually really good for sliding in vertically, for holding kind of long skinny pieces, like if you're cutting mortises in a leg or something like that, or in an apron. It's really nice because it kind of just hooks under those pieces and allows you really good firm clamping pressure on horizontal pieces.
That's everything.
Did I miss anything?
It comes with that wrench too.
Oh yeah, and this wrench, this 4mm hex, also happens to be the same size that you use to tighten and loosen the spindle carriage clamp on Origin. So this wrench comes with Workstation, and will also work on that little screw on the carriage on Origin.
Yeah, I think that covers the bases. The anatomy,
okay.
The basics.
See you later.
Of Workstation.
Been great.
So all of that having been said, why is this important? Why is fixturing even important? And like we mentioned earlier, it's because it's really difficult sometimes to hold complicated workpieces such as this chair leg, or how do you hold a cylindrical workpiece on a flat work surface, or how do you hold a workpiece repeatably, where if you're doing 10 or 50 or 100 of them, you can take one out and swap the next one in and not have to re-probe and re-grid that workspace to work on your new part. And that's where fixturing comes in. Fixturing is like the art and science of holding things. Yeah, this is why we didn't screw that down, because I think you have to lift Workstation up a little bit to get that all together. So while Noah's putting that together, just a quick reminder on the way things move. If you remember your geometry from high school, you've got three axes. You've got the x-axis, you've got the y-axis, and you've got the z-axis. So this can move linearly in the x, y, and z axes. It can also rotate about the x, y, and z axes. And when you are cutting something, you don't want it to move at all. So you have to constrain all 6 of those degrees of freedom. If we just slap this part on the clamping surface of Workstation, you've got 3 of those 6 degrees of freedom covered. but you've still got a few left. You can move in this like X and Y direction, and you can still rotate about that Z axis. So what a custom fixture for Workstation does is takes the remainder of those degrees of freedom and constrains them. Here it does that with this curve that follows this contour of the chair, a nice stop over there, and then the last remaining thing is that we want to make sure that it doesn't come off this way, and so that's why we would add a clamp, and that's where a clamp comes in. This big setup is getting a little tenuous unclamped to the workbench, so we're not going to clamp this together right now. But we do have a couple of other setups that I would love to just clamp and unclamp and see how they work. So one thing that Noah showed off earlier was the shelf. Where did the shelf go? We've got the shelf right here. So the shelf, again, 6 degrees of freedom. If, for example, you wanted to work on this rectangular piece, you've got this plane, which gets 3 of the 6, and then you could use tape or clamps or whatever else to hold this down. But what if you want to do that repeatably? Well, one thing that people don't always remember that I love to remind them of is that these spoil boards are replaceable and totally customizable. So what we're going to do here is show you something super cool. This is a repeatable cam clamp fixture that our buddy Sam here made. And yeah, let's show this off on the bench cam. So we talked about the anatomy of Workstation. Let's talk about the anatomy of this fixture. As always, with typical woodworking fixtures, you've got this plane that we're resting on. We've got 2 pins down here, which form this line and constrain the part in all of the rest of the axes except for one, which is this X direction. We've got this stop over here that you can see stops the material, all adjustable in the T-track, and then on this other side we've got a cam clamp. So as I bring this cam clamp around and tighten it, you can see now that this part is totally solid. It's not going anywhere, and if we wanted to swap this for another part, or if we wanted to work on the other side, we could undo this cam clamp here, take the part, flip it around, or probably even better, flip it around this way, so that we keep that reference edge the same, and just again tighten up that cam. And we know the holiday season is coming up. A lot of you probably have quite a few gifts to make, and so if you're making like 20 of the same thing,
gotta make a fixture.
You gotta make a fixture.
You gotta make a
fixture. So yeah, and what I was getting at here with the shelf is that you see these 4 holes here. If we go to the bench cam again, these 4 holes on the shelf, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are a standard pattern that is written in the user manual of Workstation. We've got that document digitally shared online as well. We've got a file on Shaper Hub up for it. What's the name of that again, Noah?
I was going to say, yeah. Goose, you want to bring up the, if you've got the Shaper Hub project on your screen there? Yeah. So our buddy Sam, who's the magic man around here, just does whatever, does everything. Sam does everything. Put together this amazing package of sort of digital assets, parts and pieces. All of the hole patterns, all of the kind of critical alignment edges, features for Workstation are all in this file. So you got the bottom, you've got the clamping face, you've got the hole pattern for the shelf.
Got the angle bracket on there.
Angle fence. Yeah, there's basically everything you could ever want in there. And so if you're going to get into making any custom fixtures, this is where you want to start. So you want to go and download all of those Illustrator files or those SVGs and open them in your vector editor of choice, and you can start to build fixtures from there. So you know that's kind of the starting point, and then from there you would bring in the geometry of the project that you're working on, and start to kind of align the two things there, so you can see how they're all going to come together, and then you can cut those fixtures with Origin. And now that we know how that works, we can show those features on all of these fixtures
on this one here, you've got these two holes here and here. These bolt this spoil board right down onto this where the MDF is on the shelf. Same with this slightly larger fixture. So this one just has a bunch of Delrin dowel pins and a slot for a T-track for some clamping. This is a little bigger, so it's got actually all 4 of those holes on there. This fixture, which is a riff on the V block, this is used to hold cylinders. So you've got a V, and then anything that's circular is going to nest basically in the same place on that V. This uses the locating pins on the clamping face of Workstation on these holes right here that are patterned into the side. There we go. Perfect. And we would want to probably drop the clamping face down on this one.
This is totally did this on purpose.
Ah, okay, I see.
Yeah, we didn't.
Oh, you had me there.
So I'm going to pull this off quickly. So the clamping face, again, that guy sits in 3 different height settings relative to the top surface of the body. So the first height setting is 0, right? So the top edge of the clamping face is in plane, is flush with the top of the workstation. The next one down is 25 millimeters. And so that drops the top surface of the clamping face down 25 millimeters. And again, the third one is at 50 millimeters. So why would you want to do that?
Why would you want to do that?
Well, it turns out machining into aluminum when you didn't mean to isn't the greatest thing in the world. And a lot of time when you're cutting on Workstation, you're actually going to be cutting through the back side of the part that you're working on. And so we designed a handy dandy little feature on this guy that allows you to put a spoil board in behind the work that you're doing, so that when you clamp your work onto the face of Workstation, you can actually cut all the way through the backside without cutting into the aluminum of the clamping face. And that allows you to do things like finger joints, that allows you to do things like tenons, you name it. If you're cutting through the back of something, you really, really want to make sure that there's not aluminum behind it. So that's worth triple checking. And it turns out sometimes you want to cut a little deeper than other times. And so we allowed for the 25 millimeter height so that you can cut up to 25 millimeters deep without cutting into the Workstation clamping face. And then if you want to move this down to the 50 millimeter setting, you can cut up to 50 millimeters deep. And the Workstation comes with
one more thing.
Both sizes of spoil board. So depending on what you're doing, you can put in those 25 millimeter tall ones or 50 millimeter tall.
Yep. And just like the MDF spoil board tops of the shelves, we made these really easy for you to just make more at home because they're consumable once you cut around parts for long enough. Once you cut enough tenons, you're going to want a new back spoil board. And just rip down some MDF.
You just rip some 3/4 MDF, and if you take a look in the back of the manual, again, we're going to be referencing this a lot. We did put a lot of good stuff in this manual, so take a look at it. If you go to page 26 of the manual, you can actually see the spoil board dimensions right here. So right here, spoil board dimensions. So this back section of the manual has all of the dimensions of all of the things that you might ever want to know about Workstation. So good stuff in there.
Cool. So getting back to attaching this cylinder mounting fixture,
about?
I think that's what we were doing. Yeah, I think that's what we were doing. So
you get Noah on here, and all he does is just meander around. Okay.
That locates on those 2 locating pins, and now you're translating this verticality of these 2 locating pins over to your cylinder itself. And I think Noah's going to actually run and grab a part for us to clamp, which is exciting. You put your part in there, get this clamp around it. You can probe off and find the center, and there you go. You've got a cylinder. Oh, yeah, just the right size. There we go. And this has a T-track slot in it also that we have not installed right now, but fixturing is modular. You can kind of add whatever you want to it.
Yep. Might even be able to. Not quite. Not quite.
Not
almost,
quite with that one.
Almost.
We're pretty ambitious on the size of this fixture because you can fit a circle that is, you can fit a cylinder that's much larger than even twice the depth of that V in there.
So in this moment, it might be good to talk a little bit about, once you have your fixture on, how you align things on Origin to your fixture.
Yeah, with probing.
Yeah.
And grid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. So the demo that we have today is a fixture that our dude Jake was working with earlier today. I saw it.
Me?
And yeah, you. No, our other dude Jake. Not Halloween Jake. So our dude Jake was working on.
Take this mask off.
Let's go to the bench cam. He was working on these really cool small parts. I hope you can tell that these are very artfully rounded, small square plugs. And these are screw cover plugs for an arts and crafts style coffee table that he's working on over here at the Shaper shop that you're going to probably see in the next month or two. But he needed a ton of these, still needs a ton of these. I think he's only halfway done. So we're going to cut a couple for him today using the fixture that he set up. And the first step is scanning and gridding, probing.
Let's do it. And I imagine there might be some folks joining us today that actually are maybe a little bit lost as to what the heck we're talking about with Workstation, because they don't know what Origin is. So Russ, do you want to talk us through in 1 minute or less?
Origin is autocorrect for your hands. Imagine a plunge router that didn't allow you to make mistakes, basically.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I wish someone would invent one of those.
We did.
Oh,
that's what we're here for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's a handheld CNC machine. It works on digital templates with our, if you want to get into the real nitty-gritty, computer vision system machine algorithms and tech.
Word salad.
But basically, it sees where you are and it compares that to where you're supposed to be, and it compensates in real time for any error that you make.
It's Halloween magic.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So we're using that today, and we're going to show how you fix your things to
follow
work
along.
with
What Russ is doing here is going to walk you through the steps on.
Before we do that, the steps on these screw plugs. But you mentioned, for people that don't know what we're doing today, there also probably are some people that just joined us also.
Yeah.
And we're going to just briefly mention one more time, thank you for joining us here on Shaper Sessions. Shaper Sessions.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, right. Shaper Sessions. We're working on Fixturing with Workstation today. But the cool thing that we like to do at the end, if you're watching live, that you don't get if you're watching on demand, is a Q&A. So please, throughout this whole time, drop any questions that you've got in the chat. We will answer them at the end of the show. And then also, if you stick around to the end, we've got a giveaway. And the best way to get in on that giveaway is to follow the link at the bottom of your screen, add your first and last name, and an answer to the poll, which I think is, who is your favorite Shaper Sessions host?
Russ.
No, I think it's actually Noah.
Russ.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's actually, I think it's, what is your favorite Origin operation is the question for today. But favorite Origin application. There we go.
Yeah.
So answer that question, and we'll get you entered in the giveaway.
For a chance to win.
It is a swag pack, a shirt, and or an 1/8-inch collet. All of which are really cool things, and we'll explain those in the Q&A. Yeah, we got this flag down here. This is part, but not all of the swag pack, which includes the banner, a hat, and a set of stickers. I'm wearing my hat today. Anyway,
that's enough of
that. Let's probe and grid. First thing we have to do actually is scan. So let's get this workspace in here. We're going to start a new scan, and this is the first step with any new setup. You need to make sure that Origin has recognized all of the Shaper tape that you've got down on here, and you know that it's done that when they've turned blue. And so I like to go just back and forth smoothly across and take a nice picture of the entire workspace, including what I'm working on, just because I like to see it, and then finish. So this says updating workspace 82, but we can actually rename all of those workspaces. If we go back into scan here and go into rename, and I'm going to say, let's say, to keep it short, screw covers. And what this is doing is saving this workspace so that we can go back to it anytime. The cool thing about fixtures is that they're always there for you whenever you need to replicate a project. We've got this workspace scanned in. The shelf, because it rides in that T-track, is going to be in, for the purposes of this project, in enough of the same place every time. Something that's referenced off of the alignment pins is really going to be in the same place every time. And so I can do some screw alignment or some screw cover plugs today, and then when I'm done, I can come back in a week when I decide that I want to do another coffee table with screw cover plugs. So we've got that renamed. Now we can go in to grid. And where we want the origin point of this grid, this XY coordinate system in our workspace, is where the cursor is pointing right here at the bottom of this line, where this line intersects with the edge of the shelf. And the way that I'm going to make that happen is first by changing my tool to the engraving bit, which is what I like to use to get a good solid probe. Uh-oh. We got a little camera interference here.
Just got greedy with how close you wanted to get everybody to the screen.
Right? I wanted that detail. So we're going to undo this collet. Pop in. I got it over here. You're welcome. Pop in this engraving bit upside down here, and that gives you a nice, let's go over to the workstation cam, that gives you a nice round point to probe on, so no hollow points there. We'll put that back in the spindle and clamp it up. Now let's fix this camera. How's it looking? A little askance. And down a little bit. Let's try that. That's pretty good. Okay, so we are in design mode. That's where we can grid. We're going to go over to grid. We're going to make a new grid. First step is to lower your probe, and since we're doing the outside of this thing, I'm going to lower it pretty much all the way. Set the depth here. And then you see there's 4 options here. We have depth, which we just set. Diameter, which is important. This is a 1/4 inch probe, so we have to make sure we've got that set correctly. 1/2 inch grid spacing, which is what I want for this application. That's perfect. Info, and I'm already telling you all the info. So I'm going to go in here. Probe 1, we're probing the x-axis. So 2 points on the x-axis. And then I'm going to just lift this up so that I can get into this pocket and probe the y-axis here. Now note that right now, since I'm in between my 2 x probe points, the origin automatically makes the center, this y-axis probe point, in the center of the probe, and that is not what I want for this application. I want it on the left side because I want that to line up with this edge. So you can just change that with this on-screen button down here.
And if you wanted to adjust the height of the pin on any one of those probes,
you can go right back into depth here and raise and lower.
It's really handy, and that's something that you couldn't always do, but in our was it in the last update?
We do so many updates.
I've
lost
I've forgotten.
track.
But this is a power tool that gets better over time.
Yeah.
What's up with that? Just saying.
Let's say it was in the last update, so you should go get our last update Inverness, not last as in final, last as in latest. There's going to be more coming. Latest update Inverness, and get that ability to move the height of the probe while you're in grid mode. But anyway, we got that. We're going to probe 3, and we've got this grid exactly where we wanted it, along this axis and along this axis. That's how you align a fixture that you've already made to a workspace. There you go. I think now that we're already started, we may as well just go ahead and cut a couple of these.
Let's do it.
Yeah, sweet.
Let's do it. Make some sawdust.
So the only other thing that we need at this point is our actual design. So if I go into import my files, I've got Jake's Craftsman coffee table files pulled up here. He's got his files nicely named, 1/2 inch plug. That's the one that I want. This file is not facing the right direction. The rounded end is on the right, and I want that on the left. So what I'm going to do, this is another new feature. I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees. Bring that over here to x equals 0.5, y equals 1.5. The other way that I could do that is with position, which is, again, new with our latest software update, Inverness, and I can make this x 0.5, y 1.5 inches, and that puts that exactly where I want it. It doesn't have to be on a regular grid point, and I press the green button to place that file. So I'm going to move away for a second so that we can show the setup of this. We've got this fixture here, which is pre-machined, and the important thing to look at with this, because this is a spoil board that's been used a couple of times, are these two tracks. We've got this long track here and this long track here. These are the fixture slots for 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch screw hole cover plugs. We're going to do a couple of the 1/2 inch today. The way that this works is by setting your piece repeatably in this slot. So, and Jake has tuned this slot with Origin to be nice and snug so that for those 6 degrees of freedom, we can actually rely on friction for a couple of them. So we're just going to put this in, give it a couple of taps on the end with a mallet to make sure it's seated nice and square all the way around. Pull out that spacer. We know that that's a 1/2 inch spacer. And so what we've got here is a thing that's inserted with some clearance at the end, and this is aligned, the physical space is aligned with the digital space on our scan in Origin. So let's cut a couple of these. The workflow is going to be, we're going to round one side, we're going to flip it 90 degrees, round again, and then cut off. And we could probably do 2 or 3 of them just to show how quick it is once we get in the flow. What do you think?
Sounds good. You're
Sweet.
probably going to want to change back to
I am going to want to change back
to
for
an
sure.
Indo.
Going to have a hard time cutting with this gridding dowel. So we're just going to unclamp the spindle again. Got plenty of camera clearance now.
And reminding everybody, Russ is changing back from the engraving cutter, which he's got flipped upside down. That's what we recommend you use when you're setting up a grid. That just means that the grid that you
putting
are
in this 1/4 inch cutter here
creating is very accurate to physical space.
When I'm clamping this cutter in the collet, some cutter etiquette. You want to make sure that you're not clamping on the flutes of the cutter. Leave the flutes exposed a little bit, but make sure the cutter is exposed or inserted nice and deeply, and then snug up the collet. You don't have to be a monster about it though. Just nice and snug, kind of like all the bolts on Workstation. Yeah, no hulking on the collet there. So we'll drop that back into the spindle.
Always remember
Clamp.
to tighten up the
Always tighten up
the collar clamp.
That's a mistake that hopefully you only have to make once.
I like to do it in order, so I don't ever plug the spindle in until I've tightened the collar clamp.
That's a good habit.
Yeah, because it turns out it doesn't work very well if you don't tighten the collar clamp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can pick up that habit.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, which I think I've neglected to do actually, is make sure that this shelf is nice and level with the top surface of Workstation. So that's a workflow that I think we showed off earlier. But
we actually haven't showed that one off yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got your 6 degrees of freedom. How do you align everything perfectly with this top level of the top surface of Workstation here? Well, we made this bar so that not only does it clamp on the arms, it also attaches right up here. And what we do at that point is loosen the shelf. Oh, yep, we had a little gap there, but I'm going to push it down to illustrate. We've got this big gap. We'll bring it all the way up so that it's nice and snug against that support bar, and then clamp the shelf. And that's how we make sure that everything is nice and coplanar across this work surface. So from the tape field all the way back to the support bar, everything is nice and in one plane.
And ideally, you would do that before you create your grid.
Yes. Yes. You would, but we were, I think we were off by about 1 millimeter on that one.
You're going to let it ride?
I'm going to let it
dangerously?
ride. I'm going to let it ride.
Okay.
They're Jake's parts, not mine.
Yeah,
so
right.
He'll deal with it. I think it's okay for a screw hole cover. Great. So we've gridded. We've got the design in place. We've got the right cutter in. Every time you swap cutters, you do need to make sure that you Z-touch, and I think this is going to take care of it for us. Because in this cut menu, I do like to make sure that I go through every setting one of them is off. The diameter here is 0.125 from the last person who cut, so I'm going to change that to 0.25, and it reminds me, hey, don't forget to Z-touch after changing bits. Okay, we're going to do that. So Origin is automatically probing basically the work plane with the end of the cutter. It did that, and it found the 0 point. That's awesome. So now we can take this over here. This cut path shows up, outside cut. Instructions from Jake were to do the first pass at 0.55. That's pretty good for a 1/2 inch screw hole cover. 0 inch offset, 1/4 inch cutter, outside. I think we're ready to cut this one, and then we'll flip it 90 degrees and cut the other side with a small extra offset.
Alrighty.
Shall we?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to wander over here while Russ is cutting. And just for those of you that aren't familiar with Origin, keep an eye on that white circle on the screen, the large white circle. We call that the corrective range. And the corrective range shows you everywhere that Origin is capable of moving the center of the bit without you, independently from you. And so as long as you're able to keep the little dot inside of that white circle, Origin is actually able to correct for any error, any mistakes that you make while you're cutting.
So that was quick. That's one side rounded off already, and we can show this on the workstation cam here. See how one side is rounded off of that. We're going to flip this way 90 degrees and set up the other side.
Man, that's a very subtle round.
It is a very subtle round. It's
I promise it is rounded if you can't see that at home.
It is rounded, just tastefully rounded.
Jake,
right?
Jake is a stickler.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's an arts and crafts style joke right there. If nobody caught it, but I'm not gonna laugh because it was terrible. Arts and crafts style was
Jake is a stickly.
Was espoused by Gustav Stickley. So sometimes it's called Stickley style furniture as well. So we're reset here. We're gonna go back and what did Jake say on this one? I think it was a negative 0.02 inch offset to just bring that in a little bit. Oh no, it was 0.02 the other way, so that's actually positive. When we reset this with the cut end, it goes in a little bit farther just because of the way that he has the stop set up. So this is his advice based on his process.
Okay.
Once you get a process dialed, in my opinion, you don't mess with it. So we're gonna follow Jake's instructions and see how these come out. Let's cut this other side here.
I'm just gonna wander away here, so I'm not in the noise zone. Russ is just guiding Origin roughly along that path, and Origin is just constantly correcting to keep him on the path. You know, I normally narrate this stuff, and it takes a little bit longer for you to cut, so it'd be great if you could slow down.
I'll try. So,
how'd it turn out?
You can see that it's rounded a little bit in both directions here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's show this for everyone to see. A little too far. So we've got a round this way, and then you can see what's left of the round this way. We've got it going in both directions. I think I am going to back that offset off a little bit though, because I think it took a little bit much.
I think you should just really find your bliss, Russ.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I think the point of this is that we're going to just cut a couple of these. I've got my handy dandy Japanese saw here. We're going to cut a couple real fast just to show you how quick a fixture can be. So I'm going to take this off because I don't feel like I need that support right now. I'm just going to take this pull saw, line it up, cut off a couple. Let's get this in the slot, make that nice and easy. Take this here. Okay, got one of those. We'll set this back up, and we're just ready for round 2 here. How about I cut a couple of them, Noah, and you narrate the whole time?
Sounds good.
I'm just going to get in my flow here, my fixture flow.
Fixture flow. Oh. So while Russ is working here, keep an eye keep an eye on that little dot. And so Russ is plunging into the work, and that's going to go down to the depth that he set. So similar to a plunge router, you can set up the depth that Origin is plunging to. Click the green button, and Origin's going to plunge right down to exactly the depth that you've set. That's guaranteed more or less by the Z-touch that Russ did earlier. So that sets up the 0 point of the bit, and then that depth is relative to that 0 point. So Russ is setting up again here. Man, this is really fast. I can't get a word in edgewise.
Keep going. I'm just going to cut a couple.
And you can also take a look. What's really interesting in fixturing, maybe Russ can show clearing the cut history too, because that's a really important thing. When you set a fixture up, you're likely to be cutting the same thing over and over and over again, and it's really useful to be able to get rid of the cut history that you've previously made. So you see that erase button that's next to the marker health indicator on the top right hand side of the screen. You can tap that guy, and that will clear all of the cut history that's in a workspace. So careful if you want to keep the cut history, obviously, but if you're doing repetitive cuts on a fixture, it's really nice to be able to get rid of that so that you know what you've done, especially if the fixture is a little more complex than this one. You can keep track of the work that you've done really well with that cut history.
That sounds a little bit better with that 0.03 offset instead of 0.02.
So that's the other thing. Fixturing is really fun because you can get nerdy with it. It really does allow you, when you have all of the variables kind of accounted for, to adjust very specific ones, right? With the offset functionality on Origin, it allows you the freedom to really dial in exactly what you want, right? And these little screw covers are beautifully subtle in their rounding, and it's hard to describe.
This one's really nice. That one's a little better if you want to hold it up to the bench cam.
Yeah.
Again, yeah.
All right, let's see if we can get kind of the look of this on the bench cam. It's hard to describe. I hope that you guys can kind of see that, the light reflecting off that. It's very subtle, but that's kind of what we dig around here. That subtlety is very easy to achieve with Origin, and I've been told that that's enough.
Yeah, I'm going to cut one more.
Okay, Russ is going to cut one more.
And then we can go into Q&A, maybe?
We can do whatever you want, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm along for the ride.
All right, cool.
Yeah, it looks like we got some good questions coming through, so make sure to stick around for Q&A. I did it again. Stick. I'm getting booed, guys. Help me out. What else we got to talk about here? Russ, we need to cover anything else, buddy?
No, I think we could share maybe pictures. Well, I guess I'm kind of cool. It's not really a good time to start pictures. Yeah. So
we're working right now on kind of these little tiny parts on Workstation. Remember that Origin can work beyond Workstation as well, right? Anywhere that Shaper tape goes, Origin can go. Couple rolls of that tape come with Origin when you buy, and you can stick them down just about anywhere on your hardwood floors, on your big conference tables. You don't just have to work with Workstation, but for a lot of the projects that we do around here, certainly, there's at least one or two parts that are just perfect for Workstation, if not all the parts in your project. And making furniture, making home goods, making gifts, making mechanical parts, prototypes, anything you can dream up. This is a precision tool that really can take care of any of the needs in your shop when it comes to precision work, and it does that in a really easy to use way. There's a lot of onboard design tools on Origin as well that we really haven't looked at a ton of today, but those are super valuable for just working on the fly, adjusting on the fly. It's a lot more like the kind of traditional workflow of woodworking, in that you really can adjust with your hands and your presence at the bench, and you don't have to go back to your computer every time you want to make a change, and it doesn't interrupt you that way. So
Zen, flow.
Zen, you got to get into it. It's important.
All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.